Hey guys, Al here from Create. This week we're talking about the pros and cons of a web-based application versus a native iOS Android. Now, this is actually not a simple thing. There's a lot of points that you can make here, but I want to focus just on really the basics, okay? Why would somebody who has an idea, right, want to create an application, let's say in the iTunes store, versus just doing something that is just web-based, meaning that it's like a website. It's an application that's housed like on a website in a domain, and that's how they access it. Well, there are a couple reasons, first of all, why you'd want to be, let's say in the iTunes store in this example. The first is that, if it's a native iOS, there are a lot of developer tools that you have access to that's going to make it easier to actually produce this, which is really great. The other thing that is really awesome is that you get a UX UI that already kind of exists, right? An iPhone, for example, has drop-down menus, it has buttons, it has protocols and examples that you can borrow from and use. And guess what? Your users that are going to be accessing it, they already know about these things. So you can, at a much lower investment of time and effort, you can create an application utilizing the constructs that already exist in the native environment. The biggest reason why you'd want to go, in a native iOS or Android is that the marketplace already exists, right? So with a little bit of marketing, a little bit of buzz, you can be featured in the App Store. If you're featured in the App Store, you're going to get a lot of users using your application, right? And that's something that can happen very fast. Now, conversely, if you don't do that and you're just, making a web-based, browser-based application, well, it's like me making a new website and trying to get new customers, right? I've got to figure out how to market it. Is it on Facebook, social? What am I going to do? So there are some challenges there, but there's some pros as well. The first one is that you have more control, right? So maybe how you're actually coding the application is a little bit different, and you want to be able to be off of the constructs or constraints, I should say, of iTunes, of Apple, right? Or another big reason why is that if you're selling something, Apple gets a piece of that, right? If you're selling off of the marketplace, Apple is going to get a piece of that, and that's a big deal. Whereas if you're just totally on your own, you own and control the entire environment. And that's the last big point. Remember that if you're on the, let's say in the App Store, you're beholden to their rules and requirements, their laws, right? So perhaps you're making an application that could be viewed in some parties, some circles, as being risque. Maybe, you don't feel like it's adult, but maybe, Apple does, and they kick you off. Maybe it's something that, this application that you're creating is fine on the App Store for a while, but for some reason Apple makes a new requirement or a new rule, and suddenly you're in danger of being kicked off unless you make adjustments. And what if those adjustments you have to make changes your value proposition, right? So if you're working within an environment that you don't control, then there's some risk there, and you got to be aware of that. Again, it's much faster and easier to do something native and get it out there and start proving the model versus building it totally from scratch, on a web-based situation. One of the biggest reasons, though, that you would want to have your application on a web-based system, right? Not native iOS or Android. The biggest reason is control, right? The control that you get to make changes, affect change, it's huge, right? And you're not beholden to the rules of the marketplace that you're trying to be on, right? Like iTunes Store, right? So it's a really a big deal, and these are probably the biggest reasons. Now there's a lot of other ones. There's other pros and cons here, but I think these are some of the biggest ones that it would behoove entrepreneurs and product and business owners to really think about hey, we had this idea. What's the best thing to do here? Should we put this on, in a native marketplace like iOS or Android, or should we just control it ourselves and do it ourselves? Again, there's pros and cons to all. Really look at your options before making any decisions. Thanks, guys. If you'd like more information, click on the link below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications.